Hey everybody, welcome back to another bonus episode of the podcast. We're doing, this will be our third world building episode. I'm joined again by Amy.
Hello.
Who joined me previously, where we kind of looked in depth at a dwarven town where her character Meg had settled. Today we're going to be looking kind of generally at the elf society in our custom setting. As always, you can find all the stuff about our custom setting on our World Anvil page, which I will put the links and that on our Twitter, so you can check it out there. But we're going to be referring a lot, I think, to a map that I've got on the page. And again, that's going to be one of the links I post. But it's basically the map of our custom setting. All of the stuff that we talk about, all the locations in our D&D games are all on there, or they will be put on there with their own articles eventually, but they are on the map. Today we're talking about the elves and stuff. Now, in game, we've pretty much met one elf. And that's Jason's character, which is Enathe, and he's been very he's been very, very quiet about his backstory, pretty much. So, which is one way of saying, there's not a lot to go on at this point.
He's left it successfully vague.
Yeah, I mean, his one, like when we started the podcast, his one thing, like I said to the others, I was like, okay, what kind of character do you want to make? And Jason said he wanted to be Batman. So then we got Enathe, which it's fine. There's nothing wrong with being Batman. Eventually, I managed to tease a little bit of backstory out of him, and from that, I built the only part of the elf sort of civilization that I've got any details written on, other than a few place names, is sort of towards the north. Near the coast is the village of... I don't even know the pronunciation of this. All of our elf names were gained by me typing random crap into a Tolkien elf name generator type thing. There's this village, Torrelasse is what I'm going... Yeah, it's my setting.
Yeah, just go with it.
Yep, that's how it's pronounced. Which I'm fairly sure is like Forest Home or something like that in one of the Elven languages. And that's where Enathe was from, and it was destroyed in the war. That's about the extent of what I got out of him, except for the name, which I came up with myself. So basically, what I got out of him was he came from a place that was destroyed during the Demon War. Mm-hmm. So... yeah, that's pretty much the extent of our elf stuff. So what we're going to do today, I think, is just try and come up with some details, I think, and just general picture stuff of like, this is what the elves are like. Up to now, I've kind of been running on the assumption that, which is again a little bit cliche, that the elves will mostly live in the forests. So that's pretty much where I've sort of put the any of the elf kind of towns and cities, really. But that's as with any of these world building things, we can change anything that we want to, really. Did you have any thoughts on that sort of?
I kind of feel that you're slightly limiting them if they're only like in the forest. You could probably have it that like only like the true elves, like you maybe have like hierarchies of elves. So like the higher you are, the more you're like centralized into the elvish society itself. So you'd be like, I don't know, maybe like a mayor or something of like the elven cities. But then further out you get, you can have like lower grades of elves who are like, I kind of want just to work. So I kind of that whole idea of freedom of movement.
Yeah,
so I mean, you could always have it that they're more populated in certain areas.
Like the bigger cities are in the still in the forest kind of thing.
Yeah, they're more like traditional, but they like maybe have one foot in reality, so they have like a small trading post or something, but maybe not their entire trade is based on that. So maybe it's more of like a cultural heritage thing where they
Like traditionally, they lived in the forest, and more recently, they've sort of spread out a little bit. And by recently, in Elven standards, is probably in the last few hundred years.
Well, I'd imagine like you'd always have a generation that are curious and want to like look beyond their borders. You have that small generation.
Yeah. Screw you, elf dad. I'm leaving the woods to make my fortune elsewhere.
What happens? People get curious. They ask questions.
Well, we've kind of got a little bit of that in Anade's thing, because like his whole his town was destroyed and he came back and found everybody dead, which kind of has the implication that he went off somewhere.
Yeah,
came back.
So he maybe like went off to another elven city. Like I can imagine that they probably trade very freely with each other.
Yeah,
like
and
maybe his village was an outpost or something.
I think I kind of wrote it that it was like a sort of small, just like a sort of little village. You know, it was meant to be like, hey, we're gonna strike out on our own. There's a smaller forest near the coast and that, so maybe they had thoughts of like, hey, we can go sailing or something.
Well, I mean, the main hub you've got down here near Vallanna. I hope I pronounced that right.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Is inland, so maybe they were looking for the coast, but then maybe they were looking for the coast as part of
part of a
maybe one of these rebellious youths came back, went on a journey and found the sea, and then came back and was like, look, there was the sea, and brings back shells and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I think actually, you know, we could even add in some new seaside places. It's like, these are the sea elves.
Well, they might not even have that kind of title for themselves. They're like regions for themselves. They're just like, oh, I'm from so-and-so. Oh, that's in the north. Yeah. I mean, I suppose the ones near the sea would probably have the most like renowned name, because like, oh, you're from the sea. Oh. Yeah.
I mean, I've kind of I have placed that one little village, the one that like Enade was from. This was my thought process, was like, okay, there's a forest there, I'll put it in the forest. It's been destroyed, so nobody's from there anymore. I put it far north because I needed to justify it being like far enough
nearby.
Away from, well, kind of, but like far enough away from where we were actually like playing that it fit with his like story of like since the war, which was at this point I think it's like, I can't remember the exact thing, but it's like 60 years prior to where we are. Since then, he hasn't really been back.
Yeah. I mean, I could imagine that it's like kind of like a Pompeii kind of idea, because Pompeii was near the sea as well.
A little bit. But I mean, the scales are a little bit kind of deceptive on this, because it does look fairly close to the sea, but that is still probably like, I think that is probably still about 10, 15 miles from the sea. On the map. I will at some point update the map to have like a scale on it, but like I'm keeping it like on purpose a little bit vague, but I'm just the only person I'm not helping with that is myself. Yeah, I mean, you can kind of work it out a little bit from the distance between Eravale and like the tomb bit at the foot of the mountains, because I was like, it's 3 days, but they're going through the woods sort of thing. But yeah, so that I mean, that's going to be like 30, 40 miles. So yeah, I really do think, I like the idea that like they're not all in the forests. The only reason that the place names that I've got are only in the forest is because I'm super uncreative. So, well, it was a case of like I've got a lot of dots that haven't got names, and I was like, I should probably add in some like specific elf places. And in fact, I actually maybe even added them in after our last world building one, when I was like, well, I've got one dwarf place set out, I haven't got any elf places. I really need to add some more dwarf places to this. I've got a bunch in mind, hence there's a bunch of mountain dots without names at the moment. And again, I realized that's also cliched, but we'll get to that. Some cliches are fun, you know,
and they're cliches because they work.
Yeah, exactly.
Well.
Don't get too many sort of like, I was about to say you don't get too many tunnel elves, but that's exactly what the drow are. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll kind of lay out what I've sort of got in mind then for like the forest elves, and then we can add to that. Okay. So I kind of had thought that like the kind of capital of the elf woodland sort of realms, I guess, not to fully steal from Tolkien, but at the end of the day, that's what we're all doing. Is sort of the one towards a little bit to the south, and again, I don't know the pronunciation because I just typed a bunch of stuff into a translator. Siorsa ML. It's kind of in my mind. I was like, okay, this is kind of like the Lothlorien sort of like we all live, the traditional sort of. Okay, this was the bastion of like Elven culture, and that's been around the longest. It's sort of seen
where it's where they first founded their home city, kind of thing.
Yeah. It's kind of it's seen the centuries passing and that, and like the rise and fall of various like human kingdoms around it, and it's still there, sort of thing. And everything else is kind of struck out from that.
Well, where you've placed it is quite good as well, because you've got it almost central to the two mountain ranges. You've got a little mountain range there at the bottom, and then you've got the mountains to the top, and that kind of shows like the passing of the sun almost.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. I hadn't actually looked at it like that. I just kind of looked at a forest and put a dot in the middle.
I've zoomed out of the map a little bit, and I just noticed the correlation kind of almost.
Yeah, no, it works. And I'm kind of thinking like, well, they're fairly close to a river, but not like too close. Mm-hmm. They're fairly close to like sort of some the large, mountain ranges. They're fairly close to a large lake. They're fairly central, really, in like the country. They're not too close to any huge mountain ranges, like you say. So they're not like kind of penned in or anything.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that if you tried to approach it off-road,
it's tough going.
It would be really difficult.
And it's kind of like their terrain. I don't know if you can see where I've got like the roads are sort of dotted roads going through the forest.
Yeah.
I was thinking of them more as like, okay, those are more like kind of rarely travelled trails, as opposed to like it is a fully constructed road sort of thing. But yeah, I was thinking like that's kind of the centre. It's sort of like the sort of the seat of like the most traditional elves kind of live there and probably have done for hundreds of years. Like individuals that are hundreds of years old. They haven't left for a long time. And there's a couple of sort of small sort of outposts sort of to the northeast and southwest.
Yeah.
But mostly like if they're living in the forest, I'm thinking there's going to be some that they just live in the forest. They're not actually part of a settlement or whatever. So that whole sort of forest area is kind of like their sort of domain a little bit, if that makes sense.
It's more like their own small country.
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
By the size of it,
like they're kind of peaceful enough with the the humans and that they're within the borders of the big kingdom, but they're given their own sort of special sort of dispensation as sort of like we don't treat you as subjects. You live within the borders, but you're just we need to consult the elves separately as if they're like ambassadors and stuff. Kind of how I'm thinking.
Well, especially if you want to cross their land unharmed.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm kind of thinking of the dwarves in a similar way. Actually, like they've got settlements within the borders of the main kingdom, but they sort of like police themselves a bit in that, and they kind of they keep their own kind of counsel as to what goes on under the mountains and stuff.
Yeah, it's like oh god, I can't think of the political word.
Like an enclave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost kind of like the devolution of power as well to like your different states kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So you got the main capital of the human one in Vallanna, but like the elf capital is, you got like your Welsh Assembly, Scottish Parliament in there.
Yeah. I'd also imagine they'd probably send ambassadors and representatives to the main city as well, so that they're still all in keeping with like the main laws. And
I've been thinking that they're not like fully like, I mean, they've got their secrets, but they are, they live peacefully and like there's trade and regular contact and that. They've just kind of got their own thing going on, if that makes sense. Yeah. So that was the kind of the main city, sort of near to Serenal on the lake and stuff, so it's got quite close links to that. And the second city is the one near to the Drakeseat Mountains, Tora Eska, that's fairly close to where we're at in the actual D&D story, really. I mean, geographically speaking. And that's a similar sort of deal. Like it's not quite as big or as old as the other one, but it's pretty old and big. Sort of like a second city sort of vibe.
Yeah. I was just going to point out as well, because it's next to such a large city, I'd imagine that the influence from that city would probably affect how, like, more forward thinking and more accepting of new ideas.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well. It's got, they have quite close ties to it, and you're going to see more elves in Lorana than you are in, say, like a random far-flung kind of town somewhere, just because it's so close to like a large elven town.
Yeah.
That was my thinking. And again, that's good. I've kind of put a couple of small little sort of outposts in that forest as well. But that is pretty much it. That's pretty much all I've got sort of in mind. None of it's really written down, other than place names on a map. But yeah.
But you've got some like key ideas about how the base structure is. You've got the whole idea of them being different states, but in different levels of integration, almost.
I'm kind of thinking of them like they're like Vulcans in the Federation, if you know what I mean. that sort of thing. Like they kind of live in the country and they're definitely like a part of it, but like they've got their thing going on in Vulcan. Just to completely bring in a separate franchise, but
no, it's pretty apt. But I'm also thinking that elves are also naturally promiscuous. It's very, very part of their nature as well, in some aspects.
I was going to say this was I didn't have this in mind, but bearing in mind you're the one who also brought in the first named brothel in the setting. I shouldn't have been surprised, no, really.
I'm more meaning that they're, because of that like flirtatiousness, they'll have a bit more of like dance with danger as well. So I can imagine that they'd go off, and they're not all like reserved and will follow the traditional path. They'll have
definitely one's going off and doing stuff, I think. I mean, where do you think half elves come from?
Exactly. But I think you definitely need to have like some like vagabond legend elf.
Yeah.
That they all know about, and like if you like him, you cheer, and if you hate him, if you're a conservative kind of, you just groan. You're like, oh, that's some stain on our name.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate that guy.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I like that idea. Well, that's kind of a separate issue, like a kind of like a wandering sort of folk hero type deal. Like, oh, everybody knows that guy.
It doesn't necessarily have to be alive. He could just be a dead legend.
Yeah, oh, that's true, I suppose. But like people like make pilgrimages to his resting place and stuff.
That's what maybe one of your other cities are. It's like his
oh, so like he died in like a battle or something, and they built his tomb there, and like a sort of elven kind of like there's an elven community kind of sprung up around it.
Yeah,
I like that idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually,
that's quite fun.
Yeah, and like it's a little bit touristy sort of thing. They sell like commemorative plates and stuff. It's all like there's a lot of tap being like sold.
Lots of little souvenir shops with little bags with the name on it.
Get your bobbleheads right here, sort of thing.
Little like models of his tomb.
I like it.
And it's like his deeds aren't even that great.
He just was like...
He brought beer.
Yeah.
He bought beer from over the border illegally or something like that.
See, I was thinking like he was like a great warrior, and you're thinking more like the Duke brothers.
Oh, he could have been both. He could have been the most drunken warrior ever. Like, he could only be a warrior because he was drunk all the time.
In conclusion, elves are a land of contrasts.
Exactly.
Okay. Where do you think this battle maybe happened then? Is it like... I mean, because I'm assuming... I'm thinking this isn't like a recent thing. This is like...
No. No,
This is like an
thing.
ancient battle kind of deal. So he's kind of been like mythologized a bit.
Yeah, I could imagine they've had clashes, obviously, with dwarves. So you've got like a Pel'Ambar. Is that what it's called?
Where did I put that?
It's near Tower Eska.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because it's in the mountains, so it could have been like a mountain scuffle between the dwarves.
I'm almost thinking I should put like a competing dot right next to it. Which is like like a little dwarven settlement, and like
it's a dwarven mine.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Like the other
it's
side
one singular mine.
The other side of the stream is the mine that they were fighting over. I'll add in another stream. That's easy, but
it's mountains. You can create them anywhere.
That's true. Yeah, I'll have it come out the other side, and it'll be easier. But I like that.
Yeah,
they put all, by and large, they've put the differences behind them, but the dwarves are very proud, so they've sort of, they're not giving up their kind of, they're not giving up their claim on the mine, so they're carrying on mining, and then there's this little like,
continuing to mine. There's
this elven kind of like souvenir stall across the way.
They all have a pet. They all have a pet hate because nobody remembers the dwarven commander in charge.
And like he was an actually cool dude, sort of thing.
Yeah, he was a really nice guy. Like he was the nicest guy ever.
Yeah, like he even like he'd asked permission from the elves because he knew like to mine there because it was so close to the forest and he didn't want to piss them off. And then this elven guy came along and just like accidentally kicked off a war. And like, but he's remembered because like he had like really great hair or something.
Yeah, it would be like the Franz Ferdinand of the Elvish community kind of thing. Like he was assassinated.
Oh yeah, like that's it. Like he died, and like he's just like they've made him out to be this great guy. Like this is where they killed him. This is where they killed our hero. But like really, he was kind of an asshole. Like
this is where the javelin struck him in midair, and they're always exaggerating the story.
Yeah, but really, he was like. Just like poking the dwarves, like, and just being just generally kind of a prick about the whole thing.
And that's why half of the like Elvish population love him and half of them hate him because they're like, he started a war.
The half that have actually read history are like, he's kind of a dick, and like the other half are like, he was the greatest. Yeah.
He gave it to the man. They mean the dwarf.
What I'm actually gonna do. I'm gonna go into Photoshop after this. I'm gonna add another road coming out of there then. Just maybe joining up more with the kind of main road system.
Oh yeah,
And I'll add another dot next to it for the dwarven mine of something or other, because I really like that as a weird little folk story. That's good.
It's just like a little like thing that you can throw in. Oh, there like the rumors of like Pel'Ambar, like there's little like. Trouble being brewing, and it's actually just a guy picketing the souvenir stand or something.
Oh, there's like competing souvenir stands.
Yes. Yeah. That could be even better.
I like that.
They don't know. Yeah, there's a dispute over some loot, and they're like, oh, loot, and they get there, and it's like literally just two souvenir stands fighting over.
This guy's souvenir plates are almost identical to mine. He stole my design. I like it. We're still kind of in the forest though, so it's sort of still like it's close enough to like the bigger elven city to like get a fair amount of traffic from them. In fact, I actually might the dotted path going almost directly from that. I'm going to turn into a main path. I think actually.
Okay.
Just if it is more of a like this is a bit of a touristy sort of. There's some draw to it.
Well, it might not necessarily be tourists. It might just be pilgrims, like coming to honour him. So you could have it.
Yeah, that could work.
You could have it in that other aspect, so it's
and
appeal to the pilgrim.
Yeah,
almost.
But it does pull in some outside.
Deliberately hard.
Yeah, that could work. I like that actually. That's good.
Like the test, the I don't know, like the 5 tests of. Whatever the guy's name is.
But he made his way through the forest. Like his swiftness was his ally as he crossed the flowing river, and it's just like a creek. And like as he fought the the great bear of the Forest of Reflection, and it was like he accidentally like tripped over a log and landed on a badger.
Yeah, what it could be is his path is actually a really good path because he's actually avoided all of the pitfalls on the actual real path.
Yeah.
You actually have to find the off-beaten path that he actually took because the actual path will kill them.
Oh, so like they've kind of they've put a path in to make it look like he was better than he was.
Yeah.
And like there's an actual path which is just like the true story is like he kind of fell asleep drunk on the back of a horse and woke up there. Like well, I don't know, like something silly, like it definitely wasn't as hard for him as everybody made out.
I think the idea that he was drunk all the time, you could have it that he basically was just drinking, and every time he fell over, he actually like got turned around in the right direction, and the way that he was going is like a quicksand or something. So he's actually avoided.
I like that. Yeah. So he's kind of like, I don't know,
avoiding disaster.
Yeah, but like he doesn't know he has.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
He's like, oh, we got this way then. Okay.
Somebody tried to retrace. So many pilgrims try and retrace his actual steps and die by the hazards that he accidentally avoided.
There's like plasters of like faces. Have you seen this missing person like on like one of the churches or something in Pel'Ambar or something?
Yeah.
Like we won't forget these fallen pilgrims who desperately tried to
emulate the great deeds of our namesake.
They'll forever be in our prayers, kind of thing. It's like people that climb the amount of people that die climbing Mount Everest kind of idea.
Oh yeah. I must pull out my flag. It's like, yeah, just join the queue, sort of thing.
Yeah. Like,
okay. I really like that, actually. That's good. I'm gonna have to write. I want all of these. I've got a backlog. We're only 3 episodes into these world building things, and I've got a backlog dating back from the first one because I just haven't sat down and written it. We'll get there, folks. Keep checking back.
That's why you gibber about these kind of things with your friends and people like co-workers on different podcasts and things, because the amount of stuff that like you can gibber about and throw out and just throw it at the wall is great.
You're like, yeah, that'll be funny, we'll do that, and now I've got to sit down and write an article about it. Yeah. Okay, well, I like the idea then of like, let's move away from the forests, because I feel like there's a lot of cool stuff to be said about forest stories like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a bit cliched, and if we're going to give like a bit of an overview, let's come up with some other places that the elves are then.
Yeah.
I like the idea of like seagoing elves. If you go to the north coast, there's the capital city of Vallanna.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little dot to the right of it that I haven't given a name to. Maybe that's like, it's like an elven trading port, like specifically. They're like, there's big docks at Vallanna, but they're like, oh, we're just going to set up our own, like maybe it's like a fishing village, but they also just do, I don't know, sea elf stuff out of there.
You could also have it as like the main, where they arrive to go to Vallanna. Like, they might not want to like step foot in like a dirty city as quickly as that.
Like they'd rather sort of like, okay, if we're gonna be traveling across the sea to come here, we're not going to go into the city docks like everyone else, sort of thing.
Yeah, they probably have their own, because I'd imagine they'd have like diplomats.
Yeah.
Like higher, like people who are probably working within the ministry itself.
So there is a little bit of elitism, like on the elf part. They're like, oh no, we'd rather come off at a traditional elven dock, not this dirty new human thing.
Well, it's not so much that. I'd imagine that they'd have their own kind of like quarter, if you know what I mean. Like they'd have like their own like main house, like basically their own embassy kind of thing.
Yeah.
In that area, and I'd imagine that an awful lot of the other diplomats from other places would have a similar. You could have it that it's like the hub of the the elite, really. It's like they're Brighton almost, kind of.
The Brighton of the elves sort of thing.
Brighton of the elves, kind of. But it's run by the elves, so it's like their own kind of, because they have the best kind of service, I'd imagine. It's
definitely got their kind of like architectural spin on it and everything. And
yeah, it's got the beauty, it's got that elegant kind of aspect of it. Because I'd imagine that all the elite upper class would have a shine for nicer things.
Yeah.
You could have it that it's that kind of like setup.
Are you thinking kind of a little bit like the Grey Havens at the end of Return of the King? There's a lot of kind of elven architecture on the coast sort of thing.
Yeah, you could have that.
I'm just kind of trying to visually picture it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you could have that as well, and maybe a small like fishing community that are like the serving class of elf. So they'd have their own like small industry as well. So you could have it as like a small.
It very much is like, okay, this is maybe some from the forest have got like second home there or something.
Yeah, it's like a micro community almost.
Yeah.
Like think of Balmoral. When the Queen and her family are there, it's like literally like a mini city almost, because there's so many people working around to keep that family fed, secured, and entertained.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And like it's fairly close to the human capital.
Yeah.
Like just up the coast, so like if they have to go for important meetings, they can.
Yeah, it's only.
Yeah.
It's probably less than a day's carriage ride.
Oh yeah, I mean that straight line in my head is probably. That's probably 20 miles. Again, I really need a ruler for this map, but but like with the road, so it's probably like 30-40 miles by road. So not too much in a carriage. Like you could ride there in a day, sort of thing. At a fairly casual pace.
Yeah, I'd imagine as well they'd probably be able to have like a coastal path that's direct to the.
Yeah. I'll add some dots in as well on that. I think that's to be done. But yeah, I like that idea of kind of like a bit of a Brighton sort of. I was gonna say like Eastbourne as a kind of like retirement thing, but like. I think elves don't really retire like in that way. They would be more likely to like as they age, they're like we will return to the forest. If that makes sense. Yeah. So rather than be like I'm going to go sit on the coast and stare at the waves and things, they're more like because they're fairly. But by and large, I mean this is the kind of canon D&D thing, but I'm sort of adopting it a little bit. That by and large they do still stay pretty much physically active the whole life, kind of thing.
It's just mentally they probably decline.
Yeah, they kind of go. Well, no, they sort of age into like they go through sort of various phases. I think is like the canon thing. So like when they're younger, they're a lot more sort of, outgoing out to the world and that, and then their thoughts start to grow a bit more spiritual as they get older and thinking of their past lives and that. Because I think canonically in D&D, elves do reincarnate. Like that's their deal. So, I it's in, what's it in? It's in, which book's it in? I think it's in Tome of Foes. It goes into that, because there's a big thing about the elves. I might be wrong. So it's one of those books, but it really goes into, like, every elf has had several lives before this sort of thing. So, I kind of like that idea, So, like, as they get older, they remember their past lives more and think about, sort of a bit more of the kind of bigger picture stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how I would 100% relate that in, but it's a long way of saying like maybe they don't retire to the coast. Maybe that's more of like an elite getaway, like we've been saying, is probably a bit more sort of it fits better, I think, with that community rather than just like, okay, there's a lot of elven elderly on the coast here. That's cool. Okay, so that's an idea I need to. We can flesh out. I'll flesh out with a name and stuff then. So that's like sort of a little bit sea elves, but it's kind of more of like here's an elite dock kind of thing.
Look at our marina.
Yeah. A lot of elves with sunseekers, but they're like fantasy sunseekers.
What is this thing you call burning? My skin is too pure for such things.
Oh, do you reckon elves they use magic for like sun cream and that, or they're just like a lot of really big umbrellas?
I'd imagine they just have natural regen.
I don't think I've ever seen a sunburnt elf in anything. Like, not even in like random art or anything.
Maybe in the next episode with Envy.
Like he's fallen asleep somewhere and it's just like wake up with like his like hood was half over his face and now he's got like a line down the middle of his face.
Or he was wearing glasses, or he was wearing goggles, or something like that.
Yeah, that would be pretty funny. I shouldn't be like trying to think of ways to mess with Jason's character when he's not here to defend himself. But we'll see how it goes. Okay, so I like that idea. That's kind of cool. Sort of getting away from the sort of traditional setting a little bit. I'm thinking that, like, kind of expanding on the idea, like you said, that there's like a lot of elves that kind of want to get out of the forest and just sort of see, I don't know, to sort of like spread the culture a little bit.
I'd imagine they'd be pretty, because they live for so long, they'd get really bored. I don't know, but I would get really bored if I was stuck in the forest for like a couple of 100 years. So I'd imagine they'd want to move about and
kind of
see a bit of the world. Yeah,
and then maybe return to the forest later in life when they're like, I've seen some shit.
Unless they've got like if they're an elf of if they were born into a family of high standing, maybe there's already like a path that they're being guided on already.
Like, for sure.
From like a parent or something.
Like the parent is like an ambassador, so the child is sort of. I feel like there's like a culture of like sort of part nepotism, part apprenticeship, sort of. Yeah, like
I'd imagine and they'd also be able to have they'd also be able to figure out what they're like what they're interested in as well, because they live for so long. They can try whatever they like.
Yeah,
they can pick their fancy. Like for 100 years they were a blacksmith, or maybe for another 100 years they were a bard.
Yeah, because they've got the time. They're like, I'm going to spend 50 years playing guitar.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm going to rock the hell out, is what I'm going to do for as long as possible. And then I'm going to do something else. Yeah, I like that. So there's a sort of, you kind of, you see elves, not sea elves as in elves of the sea. I mean, you sort of see elves in all, well, it doesn't explain why they're in all kind of professions, and like some person might, like their grandfather might have known the same elf, but he was doing something completely different. Yeah. I have had in mind that sort of the relationship, and again, I'm trying to avoid cliches, but I've been sort of trying to think of like the sort of how many kind of elves you would see in like magical professions, because the sort of cliche is like, oh look, it's an elven mage, or sort of, you know, you run into a lot of them, like traditionally, I mean, in sort of fantasy things.
You could tweak it slightly that it's a very high studious skill among the elves, in that it takes a couple of 100 years to truly be a master at it. So you could have a higher proportion of apprentices,
right,
and not so many like master mages.
So maybe that they, compared to like humans, almost take it more seriously, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Like there's a talent and a skill to it, and an elegance to like the way that they cast. Maybe that it's more precise, maybe. Yeah. Whereas humans, they do crazy stuff, and they, you know, they're not around for long, so they just like they rush into stuff. Yeah. Whereas elves are like, we've got the time to learn to do. We can cast firebolts properly, you know. We're not just chucking them around, you know.
You call that a firebolt? That's a match.
Look at it, it's burning and everything. Ours are like a pristine kind of
projectile missile. It's
yeah,
on
it's like
it doesn't do anything.
It's still the firebolt spell, which is a cantrip, but look at the difference. It's
elegant. Look at the tail on that firebolt.
Yours is a child's drawing. Mine is a proper firebolt. Yeah, that kind. So they got a bit of an arrogance about it, like human mages sort of thing. But like functionally, they're basically doing the same thing, but they've just like psychologically are like consider themselves better.
I mean, you could have it that there's they have to have this certain training to be called like a mage or or whatever like high class elven magic user you'd have. But then there could be an awful lot of apprentices. But then you've got also the people that have dropped out of the training. So you've got those kind of mixture of I'm a mage. Oh, have you got your qualification kind of thing? If it's like, oh, have you got your qualification? No, I don't have qualification. Oh, then you can't have that.
Sure, you've got your masters, but you haven't got your PhD yet, sort of thing.
Yeah, pretty much, kind of. Yeah. It's like it's like your A levels or your GCSEs or your Nat 5s or whatever they're called now.
So thinking then that there's like Elven, like they take so much longer to do, like to perfect the kind of magical arts, then they pretty much you don't see any kind of like 100% elves in like the kind of the human colleges and things. Like you'll see half elves there because maybe they've been brought up in like human society. But like, if you're a born elf, then you'd much rather sort of travel.
Study at an elven college.
Yeah. Go to elf college.
An elite college.
Yeah, one that takes itself seriously. It's not a party college.
Yes. It definitely takes itself seriously.
None of these 4-year magical degrees. Yes. Side note. Well, actually, no. I don't want to spoil stuff too much, but. For our listeners, but because it hasn't gone up yet, but like I'm thinking Lexa's character in our upcoming one shot, 2-part one shot, is like she definitely didn't study at an elven college. Like she's in my mind she studied at the one in like the capital city, and she went
to is it state
state school. No, I mean, no, I mean, I feel like getting into the magical learning things is a whole nother episode, really. But
that could take a lot. That's going to take a lot.
Yeah, I'm basically like, let's make Hogwarts, like. But
not.
All right, okay, fair enough. But no. So I have actually got a lot of details of that already, kind of fleshed out in sort of not in an episode, but in like articles on the page. But we can always add more detail later. Okay, so again, we don't need to get too specific, but the idea of like, okay, there's elven magical colleges that are sort of humans can enter, but they probably won't live long enough to graduate, sort of thing. You know, that's how long it is.
I suppose it depends what they want to study as well, like what type of magic they want.
Yeah, it's just a quick 40-year degree. That's all.
I mean, you could probably have one of these like human accepting ones in like that Tyresca city. So
they've maybe got like a accelerated program or something.
Or they've just got like a
accelerated for them kind of thing, but is really pretty much the same as going for a full thing.
But they get to learn alongside elves.
Yeah, which, that would be better, wouldn't it? We are more precise. You, in your whole time here, you will learn one spell.
And they'll like look in awe as like they see this elf cast all these like really cool spells, and they're like, oh, that looks so beautiful. When do I get to learn that? Never.
Maybe if you start learning now, you will have mastered 3 of these by the time your great-grandchildren are married. Yeah. So the kind of like, I feel like it's almost like again, trying to avoid the kind of cliche of like, oh, there's arrogant elves, but maybe it is kind of like a sort of systemic thing that like it's just how their society structured. It's like, and it kind of works that way in a lot of things. So like the like in the magic thing, they're like, yeah, we'll take humans, but you're not going to graduate. But that's from a systemic thing of like, because it takes so long to do it, kind of thing. Yeah. So
it's just because their lifespans are so long. I'd imagine if they're wanting to learn something, like intimately, like learn something inside and out, they would take their time, regardless of how long that would take, how long it would take, because they have that opportunity of the lifespan. And if they decide in the halfway through this process of learning that they don't, in fact, want to do that, they still have the opportunity to go and learn something else.
Yeah.
So it's like, I can imagine there's a couple of elves, maybe not many, that are like multi-skilled in a couple of different like areas
they've
during their lifespan.
They've got long enough lifespan that they can just learn a bunch of stuff for like decades and be like, and still not be that old in elven terms.
Yeah, or you could have like the drifter elf who like only sticks around for maybe 2 years in a job every time. And so every time they can turn around and go, oh yeah, I did this. One time I did this job. Oh yeah, where were you at?
So they're like their CV or their resume is like actually like a full book-sized thing.
Yeah, pretty much. But they're not very skilled in any of them.
No, they're just like, hey, I've done everything. Not very well, but I've had enough time to do everything. It's actually kind of like going back to Enade, Jason's character. He's kind of actually made a thing of it that like one of Enade's sort of like things is that he looks on pretty much everyone as like, oh, you're all just children.
Yeah.
Because he is, I can't remember the age that Jason said it. He is. That said, I can just bring up his article on here. Check out our World Anvil page. It has articles. He is 127, which is kind of young for an elf.
Yeah, he's maybe just like...
He's like the equivalent of like...
He's already had enough.
Yeah, he's like the equivalent of he's like 24 if he was a human.
Yeah.
In terms of age.
That's when you do have a period of that during that time when you just think that life is just crap and everybody's just like whining. Yeah,
I think we've kind of been playing it that like he was kind of a little bit sort of what made him kind of cynical was his like the destruction of his village and some of his family died, but we haven't really gotten into it recently, so I do need to at some point, we'll hash all that out and see what comes out in the story. But yeah, that whole kind of that attitude of like, oh, you're all just children, even though like I say in his own standards he's not really that old. Mm-hmm. Everybody he's kind of running into pretty much is like a lot younger than him. Mm-hmm. Like, well, we haven't found out how old Prance is because Prance doesn't know how old Prance is, and I think Bork's going to be like 40, and they look at them like, look at you, children, sort of thing, which is kind of how it's sort of his attitude has sort of come into that as like, oh, why am I even listening to these people, sort of thing. Which is, I think it's a really interesting way to play that kind of thing. But yeah, I do like the idea though that that's maybe not a universal response to the age thing though. So we shall see in future stories. Dun-dun-dun. Okay, well, I think we've got some stuff we can build on there. The point of these world building episodes isn't to like set in stone every single little thing. I think it's just to kind of flesh some stuff out a bit more, and I really like what we've come up with. So I think we're going to do what we normally do on these world building episodes, which is I'm going to say to you, pitch me something completely new and completely random for the world. Last time you came up with the village of Fart, which is a village, where nobody is allowed to laugh, or just sort of culturally they don't like to laugh because they're so used to people laughing at the name of their village. And the legend,
town without humor.
Yeah, the town without humor, and the legend of the one guy from there, who I believe you called Ronald McDonald.
I did call him Ronald McDonald because it makes people laugh because it rhymes. They're like, "Oh, Ronald McDonald, that rhymes."
And we're going to try not to get sued by McDonald's for that. But he was the guy from there who laughed.
He was a traveling comedian bard.
Yeah. So that was what you came up with last time. So I know I didn't give you a huge amount of warning about this, but pitch me something new.
I kind of want to flesh out the Pel'Ambar guy.
Okay.
The legend guy.
All right. Okay.
But I don't know, because we know he's a drunk.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what about, and I can't think of a name right now.
Be like
or
an
maybe
Elven...
maybe he's called Pel'Ambar.
Oh, and they renamed the the sort of... Oh no, if we're going with the whole kind of they founded a sort of memorial around him.
Mm-hmm.
The elves named that Pel'Ambar, and which I should put that back into the translator. What the hell does Pel'Ambar mean? Pel means to go around, or it means fade in Sindarin. What does Ambar mean? This is me trying to reverse engineer what I wrote before. Means earth.
Around the mountains.
You know, that probably was my thought process. Like, it's at the end of the mountains, we'll call it Pel'Ambar. But, yeah, no, we'll say that was his name. Screw it. Okay.
You can always make it up.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Maybe he was a mountain, like he was a big big elf.
He's the biggest elf you've ever seen.
Yeah, and he drinks so much, and...
Are you thinking like tall? So maybe he's like kind of tall and gangly, or maybe he wasn't. Maybe that's part of the legend. But like, oh, we called him that because he was maybe he was just a giant elf. Maybe he was just a giant elf, like a big, like, not quite like the Obelix to the Gault, the village of Gault, the Asterix.
Gault, yeah. But like.
Oh no, Obelix was the tall one. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, Obelix is the one who fell into the potion. But like he's a muscular kind of elf, and they're kind of like, "What happened to you?" And he's like, "I don't know, just been blessed."
Just got super ripped, guys.
Yeah, it's like a Gaston kind of vibe. I don't know why.
There's a lot of Gastons in this setting. I'm just gonna say.
But yeah, that kind of build.
Yeah.
But just odd for an elf. But then.
Just got like super, like, talking about elves, like putting 20 years into something, he put like 10 years into getting super ripped.
Yeah, like he could just have been, well, he's going to be fighting there, so I'd imagine you'd be like you'd be a soldier of some sort.
Yeah, like most elves rely on their kind of like natural like grace or like dexterity and stuff. He was just like, nah, man, I'm just going to do a lot of lifting and like just get super cut and beefy.
Drinks like a fish.
Yeah.
And then he got drunk and randomly found his way to Pel'Ambar. Or it was whatever it was before Pel'Ambar.
Well, maybe it was just like an unnamed dwarven mine.
Yeah. And picked a fight with the dwarves who set up shop the next door.
Well, what are you doing so close to the forest?
This is our forest.
This is our forest. And they're like, we're not in the forest, we're in the mountains.
No.
Get out of the forest. He's just like super drunk.
These dwarves.
That's not even like unheard of in the setting either, because like they got really drunk as well and got super argumentative. So maybe that's like yeah.
Don't give them alcohol.
Like some people are like happy drunk, some people are like angry drunks. Elves are like
angry.
Argumentative, like like who are you looking at? Sort of. They're liable to start a fight if you get them drunk enough.
What do you mean I can't get served? What do you mean?
So Meg in a pub again.
Look, mate, you're not getting served. My pub. Get out or I'll force you out. Oh God, that'd be hilarious. Just puts this elf out.
Okay, so all right. he's a tall dude, but he's kind of tall. He's just kind of muscly for an elf. He's drunk as hell.
Picks a fight with the dwarves of the mine across the river, I think you said.
I think I said about that. Yeah, I haven't got a river on the map, but I think I might put a stream in there.
Yeah, there could be a little bridge in there, and that's where it happened.
So
and on the bridge, there's a little shrine, and then on the elf side of the bridge, there's the bigger shrine that all the tourists can go to.
And on the dwarf side of the bridge, there's just a lot of confused-looking dwarves.
Yeah, though by now they're probably used to it. Oh, or the Egypts. Carry on with your day, kind of thing.
There's no longer any fighting, but maybe occasionally there's some reenactors on the elf side of things.
Yeah, like on Abbey Road kind of stuff, and it blocks traffic.
There's a lot
you get two people acting the whole thing out, and they're blocking traffic, and the dwarves are just going mental, throw stuff at them.
One of them's dressed up like Pel'Ambar. The other guy is dressed in a little bit of a culturally insensitive dwarf cosplay, considering that there's actually dwarves right there, and the dwarves are what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, they're always the ones that get pelted.
Yeah, and one elf is oh, we got to reenact the Battle of Pel'Ambar's Last Stand or something, and so he gets a couple of mates to be the dwarves. And they get drunk and go fight on the bridge and have a great time. It's a popular stag weekend thing.
But could you imagine the dwarven side as well? There obviously has to be some really funny protest.
What,
like a burning effigy of Pel'Ambar or something like that, or take your Pel'Ambar, and throw it over and it lands in the stream or something. Take your Pel'Ambar and stub it.
It's an ongoing source of tension.
Yeah. But everybody's kind of it's kind of stupid tension. Nobody takes it deadly seriously.
Yeah.
They don't take it deadly seriously.
But the dwarves aren't happy about it, and the elves are just they're I don't see what's the problem. They're just getting pissed off over nothing. The elves are pretty much, this is by and large, they get on fairly well with the other people in the land, but this is the one bit where they're just pretty culturally insensitive about it. I like it a lot. Cool.
I just Pel'Ambar, the drunken dwarf, jacked elf even.
Yeah. I would love to see that as we never get any fan art, but the idea of a really jacked, really drunk elf fighting a bunch of really confused looking dwarves on a bridge.
Yeah, and then he dies.
Yeah.
Then he accidentally dies. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
They think he's been killed by a dwarf, but it turns out it was a complete accident, he stabbed himself or something. Or
he slipped on the bridge, fell in the river and drowned.
Yeah, basically.
They're he fell beyond hope and memory.
You pushed him.
It's quite slippery up here, there's water spraying and everything.
Yeah, it's a river, don't you know?
I like it a lot. The Legend of Pel'Ambar, the kind of an asshole. Cool. Okay, well, thanks so much for joining me again for another world building episode.
Thanks for having me.
We are going to be back next week with another Cthulhu episode, which we've already recorded. And you're on as well, so
yes,
playing Madam Sway. The one going up is the second half of our last session, just for
okay,
spooky stuff. Cool. Okay, so thanks so much for joining us, everybody. As usual, you can find us on Twitter and Facebook, both of which we're at Pretend with Dice. I'm going to be posting the links, as usual, to our World Anvil page up on Twitter when this goes live. So after you've already heard it. Well, whatever. By the time you got to this point, you would have heard it. Look, I'm not awake. Okay. I'm going to leave this bit in. That's how not awake I am. So we'll be back next week, which is going to be Thursday, the 25th of April. with Call of Cthulhu. So, yeah, thanks once again, and we'll see you all later. Bye.